This is The Dime, a 10-minute dive into the cannabis and hemp industry through trends, insights, predictions, and tangents.
Good morning. This is the week of May 7th. This is The Dime. As always, I've got my right-hand man, Kellen, here, and today we're talking about Chapter 11 for Extractors. Kellen, in early February 2020, Canna Global, one of the largest and best-known extraction companies, filed for bankruptcy in Kentucky, as he was unable to raise enough new capital to complete its large facility in the city of Mayfield. Since then, we have seen Alto Holdings, Elemental Processing, and United Cannabis Corporation all follow Canna and file Chapter 11. According to hemp benchmarks, there are rumblings in the field that a number of the well-known large-scale extraction companies are facing critical capital constraints. Here's my question to you. What is the number one reason you believe all these extractors are failing?
Too much excitement. I feel a lot of people, there's a lot of excitement around the green rush. Entrepreneurs jumped in left and right. And really, the excitement led to a poor business plans and large egos, in my opinion. People got really greedy really quickly, thought they were going to be really rich overnight, which led to unrealistic expectations from a business perspective. A lot of people thought this was going to be like the tech industry, where like you show up, you have your $100 million, you build out a couple facilities, you turn around and it's worth a couple $1 billion, right? It's a completely different space than the tech space from an entrepreneurial standpoint. It's an agricultural industry, and you just don't see that kind of fast growth that you do in the tech space with an agricultural commodity product, which is what cannabis and hemp are. And because of that, I think that a lot of business plans were poorly designed, and they had ROIs that they thought were going to be achieved within a few years. And realistically, they're ROIs that are probably 15, 20 years down the line, and they're agricultural ROIs. So you could literally go an entire year where you lose a crop and don't make any revenue. A lot of those factored into just the poor business plans from building out these facilities and managing expectations is really where the downside came. And a lot of people wanted to just be as big as possible right off the get-go, because the bigger they are, the more money they can make, the better the returns they will get. And the problem with that is that you can't just build something that large and expect it to sell. You need to build something that there's a demand for, and you can't just create a demand out of thin air. What do you think, Brian?
So I think you were spot on. I think scalability, starting small and working large would benefit a lot of these extraction companies, but I think they also fall in love with the idea from a business plan standpoint, what you can do at a small scale. If you multiply it to a large scale, the exponential return on some of these capital investments, I think it's super enticing. And for people who are moving into the space, it's, as you've described it, similar to an oil refinery. And if you don't have the type of personnel to manage and run effectively an oil refinery, you're going to run into obstacles that are really going to be challenging, and you're going to have to rely on different skill sets than previously identified. At the end of the day, it all comes back to the operating capital. It's one thing to start an oil refinery or an extraction facility. It's another thing to have the capital to continue to purchase the type of biomass to keep the refinery running, and then to find a partner to take that amount, because the larger you get, the more it's going to cost to run the machine. The more it costs to run the machine, the more it's going to cost you to keep feeding the machine. And then for the output standpoint, you're going to need a strategic partner that's large enough to purchase the heavy volumes that you're producing. For any wide-eyed opportunists who are interested in learning from these others' mistakes, what can they do to not fall victim similar to their predecessors?
So the industry's been around for more than 5 years now. Even cannabis and the hemp industry both have been around for a while. They've been giving out pilot license for hemp since 2014. So it's been around. Based on that time, there's people that have been involved in a couple different companies, and there's a plethora of consultants out there. Getting in touch and talking to individuals who have been in the industry and consultants that are providing services to help people avoid the common pitfalls that a lot of these large companies came in and just made mistakes left and right. I think that that's probably one of the most important things you could do, is get out and start talking to consultants and other people that have been in the industry and do the best job you can from learning from their mistakes and what they have to say.
I think it's really funny that we bring this up because we've had extensive conversations with people who were wide-eyed entering the space, and they push back on the feedback we give on starting small, understanding your costs, understanding your inputs and what your outputs are. And they're like, why should I do that when I can do this? And it's funny to believe that these people who are handwriting these personal investment opportunities that are pushing back on the feedback that we're giving as a strategic partner who's here to ensure their success. Listen, the more money they make, the happier obviously they'd be and the more they'd want to work with us. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as third-party service providers to ensure their success. And sometimes our expertise is to start small, diversify your risk, and understand the costs that go into these investments to ensure you are around in year 2, 3, and 4, so that you're not looking back and being like, damn, I wish I would have done this instead of this, because the game's expensive, the finance expensive. At the end of the day, not everyone has the stomach for it.
Yeah, and just one other thing I want to just add on to that is that I see this problem all the time in the industry is we have a client, we put together a pro forma, we're going through the numbers, and they're like, oh, look, like I can make X amount of money when I get going. And the first thing they say to me is they're like, oh, well, we'll just run a 24-hour facility and we'll do an ABC shift and we'll triple our money. And I'm like, and it's challenging, right? Because yes, if you change those numbers on that spreadsheet, the money triples for sure. I'm not going to argue with anyone on that. The thing that is unrealistic is you're sitting in a room having this conversation with 3 people, and that's the company. And you're like, so each one of you is going to work a shift 27 days a week, 365. Like you're going to need managers, org charts, trained individuals. Like you're talking like you just changed the number on this spreadsheet. We also got to go to the employment section and add 10 people because you're not going to have 4 people because people need days off. There's this thing called weekends and like all these other things, right? Like there is a lot of people jumping in that just don't have an understanding what it takes to run a manufacturing business. And I think that is the biggest disconnect.
For sure. It's prediction time. Which, if any, of the major extraction companies do you think will file Chapter 11 and why? This is for sure a shitty question, but that's why it's a prediction.
No, it's a good question. It's just I'm trying to think which company I think will file a Chapter 11. I think Curaleaf.
Huh. Why?
I think they grew way too big. I think that they fell victim to kind of shiny object mentality where they're spread really, really thin. They just laid off the entire scientific staff that got Select to where they are. I think that speaks volumes in terms of where they currently are. They signed $1 billion deal with Cura Selected, and then 6 months later it was changed, and then again it was just changed. Now it's only like 700 million, I think. And so there's these rumblings that like you could pull a lot of interesting ideas, I guess, or opinions out of interpreting that stuff. But I think they spread themselves way too thin. They're in massive, massive amounts of capital they've invested into the hemp industry. They have massive amounts of capital they've invested into California. They brought in some really, really expensive people that haven't really produced significant results, I guess you could say. So I think that they could be the next big company to file for Chapter 11.
I'm going to go with Paragon Processing. Whenever you open up the largest extraction facility, and I think last time I read it was in Denver, and that was the largest one to date. Anytime you open up the largest one and the industry has setbacks, doesn't have buyers for some of these large-scale purchases, isn't interested in diversifying their revenue streams with tolling and other opportunities, hasn't considered some potential setbacks as in insurance for holding product, I think there's a lot of opportunities for failure there. And I think when your costs are as high as theirs has to be for operating the largest facility, I think you run the risk of running out of cash.
I agree.
So that is the week of May 7th. Thanks for everyone's time.